I want to continue sharing. I think this was a very interesting experiment started by Dr. Y.V. Reddy when he was banking secretary. When we visited the State Bank of India and talked to the board, that today we are in a totally different world. This is post-liberalization, and McKinsey has already done its job. So it is all customer-driven world, and stakeholders are asking, how can we bring more objectivity in promotions, appraisals, etc. in the bank, and therefore we think that rather than entirely banking on internal promotions, where particularly the appraisal marks never were below 90%. Everyone seems to be a good performer. So we need to differentiate the potential and identify only good leaders for the future of the banking industry. Mr. Kakotkar was the chairman, and then they had two deputy MDs or MDs, I think these were MDs that were there, which included Mr. Verma and Mr. Bide. So three of them uh, readily, I suppose they didn't have much of an alternative, readily agreed to carry this experiment. Of course, they commented, most of our managers saying, you have been observing us for so many years. What you can't see in the last 20, 25 years as managers who have grown in the bank, will you be able to see any new leadership qualities with the help of some external people? Well, therefore, I think it's important that we establish credibility. The first program was held in State Bank of India Staff College, Hyderabad, and the committee consisted of the outsiders, Dr. S.K. Chakravarti from IIM Calcutta, the chairman and the two MDs of State Bank of India, Dr. Y.V. Reddy himself as banking secretary came to Hyderabad, and Mr. Tarapur, who was deputy governor, Reserve Bank of India, and one of the board members who was IIT director, IIT Madras director, he also joined the. So all of us, we were about 7, 8 of us, got together at State Bank of India, surveyed a lot of literature, and invited for the promotions about a group of about a dozen people, if I recollect, and they were to spend 2 full days, and we assigned our tables so that in each table we'll get one or two of them only to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we keep observing them. So we said we need to observe, interact. So we called it more of an interaction. And I surveyed a lot of literature and identified the qualities of a leader in the changing world. And on the basis of that, we developed a system of presentations. They would be given topics, and then they'll be given just about a few minutes before the topic, and they should speak ex tempo for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and so on. A presentation, a group discussion, and an individualized interaction with each one. I think the interaction lasted for almost an hour to hour and a half. Unknowingly, we may have used some principles of BI. At the time, BI was not popular, but something like that. So it was a very intense exercise of experts, to behavioral scientists, uh, to administrators from representing government of India, the Reserve Bank, and the banking, and then a whole lot of the internal people. So we would not look at their appraisals, but we will only look at the competencies we identified, and we found that this particular thing worked very well. I think this continued in my own involvement. It continued for almost about 3 to 4 years, where all GM to CGM, CGM to DMD, they were all assessed through this. There were a large number of interviews. Maybe in a year, about 3 to 4 batches used to be covered, and I saw very significant change in those 2 to 3 years. For example, if somebody came from New York or Chicago, in the individual interaction, largely we were trying to ask questions like, what is it that they have learned in Chicago or in Tokyo when they are with the State Bank of India about other banks, what they are doing. In the beginning, I think we discovered that there was more of a family feeling. As a result, they never went out, because thinking that, look, what is there to learn from others, because India is different. But in 2 to 3 years, we found that when the managers who are coming for interviews have done a lot of their homework, surveyed the other banks in their city, collected a lot of information, and they were today a totally different, on a different ground, and suggesting many innovative things that the State Bank of India should do. I think this was a great transformation that took place because we never called it assessment center, a modified assessment center. And imagine people like the Deputy Governor, Reserve Bank, the Banking Secretary, Dr. Reddy, and the one of the IIT former directors who was on the board of SBI, and SBI chairman and two MDs sitting and interviewing or observing the group discussions, etc., etc. I think it was really a lot of fun. I do think that this has brought in a lot of interesting change in State Bank of India. I have a feeling it is because of some of these interventions that were made in uh, 80s, late 90s, thanks to Dr. Y.V. Reddy and others. I think the good leadership bench has been built up. Of course, these were all followed with training programs and things of that kind. After that, I have not kept track. I do not know what happened. I think the committees change, the banking secretary changes, the chairman changes. So when these kind of changes simultaneously take place across a period of 5 to 10 years, I am told that things do get diluted or may take a new form and things like that. So I'm sure State Bank of India continued this. So this is the other interesting. So after 2002-3, I didn't have much of an opportunity to participate in the banking sector. However, 1997-98, I had the opportunity to have been appointed as advisor to Reserve Bank of India and HRD advisor to Reserve Bank of India. Thanks to Dr. Rangarajan and one Dr. Talwar, I think they wanted me to bring some changes and help them. And I think the unfortunate thing that happened was that we picked up performance appraisal as a system where we can bring change. I look back, I think this is a big mistake that was made because it's a performance appraisal, no matter what you do, uh, is a political kind of a system. There are a lot of issues involved. Unions are involved, associations are involved, reluctance of the, let us say, some of the departments which maintain data about people to share was involved. I had tremendous difficulty getting the assessments done by every single senior officer across the last 5 to 10 years and establish a leniency index or strictness index. My hypothesis was that every person has some kind of a index of leniency. Some are very lenient, some are very strict. No matter whom you appraise, you are likely to appraise at a. So to get these data, I think it almost took about 1.5 years, and I was hardly there for about a year because I didn't think that I was being effective as an advisor in HRD. So after that, I suggested that you call me whenever you like, rather than my having an office here every time coming and then doing all of it. So this whole thing was it was a great experience for me. The only thing we had done was we organized a workshop at State Bank Staff College, the Agriculture Staff College in Pune, where we got all the association representatives. And also we conducted a employee satisfaction survey. And these, both the survey as well as these discussions, were remarkable things that we did because the officers association wanted opening up the ratings. I was very reluctant. I said that, look, the little culture I know, if you open up the ratings, you're going to have more trouble. But they insisted. I'm told later, Reserve Bank of India introduced the open system of appraisal where ratings are known, and that was, I'm told, a disaster. And there was some rethinking about whether to go on with this or not. This is the other thing, but it's not only the public sector that I've had the good fortune of working with in banking sector. I had also an opportunity to work very intensely with the Federal Bank. That was in around 2010. Federal Bank was have invited me to look at their entire HRD. So we surveyed the entire bank. I think about 3 to 4 thousand officers participated in the survey, looked at the HRD part of it, and came up with many recommendations to improve entire HRD systems and so on. I cherish this report and interactions with people. I think Federal Bank was very keen to implement all of it. There was a change in the managing director. The time I did the survey, it was Mr. Bide with whom I had interactions in State Bank. But after that, I think there was a change. And I think the next MD continued with the initiative. So he got TVRLS to introduce assessment centers. He got the competency mapping done, relook at the training system. I think many good interventions have been made in Federal Bank, which I'm sure has helped Federal Bank in doing a large number of things that they have been able to do so far. So, friends, this is really to share some of the thoughts that I have. In sum, if I have to say, banks are great institutions. These banks are institutions where people serve other people. So, they have got to be HR institutions. Unfortunately, when those which are meant to serve people get targeted numbers, and there is no alternative, you have to work for numbers, and finance people largely work with numbers, then there is a risk of inability to balance people with numbers, and there is a risk of treating people as numbers, and that is when I think things go wrong. If I look back my work with the banking industry, I think this is the single most important thing, that there was no HR philosophy, and there is no HR philosophy with customers. I think HR philosophy should start with customers, understanding customer as a human being. Of course, it is not to say that everyone should be taught psychology, and all those who deal with the customers should be HR managers. Today, I maintain that HR is not anymore a department or a function in a banking industry. It has got to be the job of every single employee. And post pandemic, I maintain every single employee should manage himself or herself. So we have to teach in banking, how do you manage yourself? Whatever is the level at which you are a receptionist, or you are, I think, in the olden days, you are called as a support staff or a technician or an officer or a clerk, or whatever designation you have, it doesn't matter. Today, pandemic has taught the dignity. Everyone is important. Every single employee among the thousands and thousands of employees in a bank is a great contributor to the image of the bank, to the service. So everyone serves, including somebody who carries papers from one table to other. Nowadays, of course, you don't require too many of them. Serves people. So banking industry is HR industry. You can't do anything without looking at HR in a bank. So this is the most significant lesson that I like to give to all those who are in banking, that please treat every customer as a possibility and a future potential. Train your each one of your employees to look at other people with empathy, to look at with as a source of business, as a source of help, and you exist for the customer. I think Mahatma Gandhi said this long ago. Most banks carry uh, Mahatma Gandhi's quotation saying customer is God, and so on and so forth. This is one thing that I would say. They are great institutions. They have always been enthusiastic. They tried their best. But the process of, I think, the target setting, numbering, which is inevitable, could deviate. And of course, I don't want to say much about it. The risk aversion due to whatever regulations that are there, I think we have to be constantly, it's not easy. You have to have regulations so that you ensure ethical banking and good banking. But at the same time, I think when you overplay it, then what happens is numbers become more important. People become numbers. And when people become numbers, you can't do real good business. So this is what I like to say. Uh, I'm sure Khandelwal's book gives a lot more insights at the governance level, leadership level. But my take would be, if the banks have to change, everyone should become his or her own HR manager, and they should focus on people as great possibilities, human beings. Every customer that maintains any account or a record with you is a great possibility for you, and he is the main reason for your survival. And I think all employees should recognize, and all employees should be trained for this particular purpose. I'm sure our banks will be great institutions in future if we do all of it and just bring this one single attitude.